webinar.
Just give me 1 second to get it on YouTube.
Are we good to go?
Yes, we're good to go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rich Bradley, President of the Board of Public Service. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Public Service for Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. This is a public meeting, and there are no lettings today, but we do have one hearing which we will handle at this time. Hearing numbered 126107-RH. Hearing number 126107-RH is being conducted pursuant to section 26.100.030 of the revised code of the city of St. Louis. The purpose of this hearing is to determine whether to revoke the conditional use permit numbered as 125107-RH issued for DBA, the Tavern at Clifton Heights, CO Stephen Cook, to occupy 2817 Watson Road as a full drink bar with outside seating and a patio. The parties have been notified of the violations of the conditions of this conditional use permit in writing by certified mail, along with the posted notice of today's hearing date. This hearing has been convened in order to address the issues surrounding conditions number 1, number 4, number 5, and number 8 of the conditional use permit, and the conditions in questions are as follows. Condition number 1, the applicant shall provide a concealed commercial dumpster for which he will establish a trash removal contract through a private source, schedule regular pickups, and maintain the entire premise in a clean and orderly appearance at all times. Condition number 4, the applicant must apply for and receive a permit from the City of St. Louis Building Division before posting permanent signage, and permanent signage must be approved by the Office of Zoning Administrator before being installed. Condition number 5, the applicant shall apply for and receive a sign permit for all existing permanent signs advertising to the outside that do not have permits, or remove the signs upon receipt of these conditions. And condition number 8, the premise shall not become a nuisance property pursuant to ordinance 68535. The Office of Zoning Administrator has the burden to prove the conditional use permit conditions have not been complied with. After all evidence of the zoning administrator has been presented, the board will ask for additional testimony, if any, in support of this revocation. Then the conditional use holder will be given an opportunity to present evidence. Lastly, the board will hear other testimony in opposition to the revocation, if any. Your testimony is being recorded. When you come forward, please state your name and address and be sworn in. As you testify, please direct your comments to the board and not to those in the audience. Members of the audience are asked to remain silent and not coach the witnesses. During your testimony, members of this board may have questions for you. Following the hearing, the board will proceed with its regular agenda. Following the conclusion of the regular agenda, the board will deliberate, discuss, and vote on the hearing. The board will notify the conditional use holder of its decision by mail in about 2 weeks. The Board of Public Service has in its possession the following documents, which are being introduced into evidence. Item 1, a certified copy of the zoning code of the City of St. Louis. Item 2, a memorandum dated March 19th, 2024, from the zoning plan examiner to the zoning administrator, stating that on March 19th, 2024, the zoning inspector found violations of conditions number 1, 4, 5, and 8 of the conditional use permit. This memo includes the photographs of the noted violations. Number 3, the conditional use permit numbered as 126107, issued for DBA, the Tavern at Clifton Heights, CO Stephen Cook, to occupy 2817 Watson Road as a full drink bar with outside seating and a patio. 4, a public nuisance notice dated October 18th, 2023, sent to Stephen Jacobsmeyer, TRS, at 6604 Itasca Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63109, from the Department of Public Safety, Neighborhood Stabilization Division, providing notice that the city believed that the properties at 2815 through 2819 Watson Street were a public nuisance. Item 5, a letter dated March 26, 2024, sent to DBA, the Tavern at Clifton Heights, CO Stephen Cook, 2815 through 17 Watson Road, from the board secretary, warning of the violations of conditions number 1, 4, 5, and 8 of the permit that were found upon a recent site inspection and providing notice for today's hearing. Item 6, a letter dated March 26, 2024, sent to SMC Ventures LLC, CO Stephen Cook, 87 Grosso Plaza, Shopping Center, Box 249, St. Louis, Missouri, 63123, from the board secretary, warning of the violations of conditions number 1, 4, 5, and 8 of the permit that were found upon a recent site inspection and providing notice for today's hearing. Item 7, a letter dated March 26, 2024, sent to Jacobsmeyer Realty, CO Stephen Jacobsmeyer, TRS, 6604 Itasca Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63109, from the board secretary, warning of the violations of conditions number 1, 4, 5, and 8 of the permit that were found upon a recent site inspection and providing notice for today's hearing. 8, photographs of the notice of today's hearing posted outside 2815 through 17 Watson Street. And finally, 9, a copy of the public notice posted for today's hearing. At this time, the board asks the representative of the Office of Zoning Administrator to please come forward and be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give at this hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, President and Board. My name's Sandra Long. I'm acting zoning inspector for the city. As of yesterday, on my inspection, I found in violation, number 1, the dumpster is still not concealed. And number 8, there's the nuisance letter is still dated October 18, 2023. And I found that all the permits were pulled for the signs that are up. They're not all issued, but they're all pulled right now.
Okay, so just to be clear, upon your recent site inspection, out of the 4 that were noted today, only conditions number 1 and number 8 are still in violation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor up to the board members for any questions for our zoning inspector. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify, the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in at this time. Michelle, is there anyone in the room with you? Michelle, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, President Bradley. We have Kevin Harrington. He's going to be sworn in to testify.
So this is for support of the revocation, is that correct?
Are you in support of the revocation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and swear the person in.
Okay, if you could raise your right hand for me. The testimony that you're about to give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am. So,
Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the board.
my name is Kevin Harrington. I live at 6016 Marmaduke Avenue, St. Louis, 63139.
And I would just ask you to please speak loudly so we can hear you clearly. Please proceed and tell the board whatever you would like to tell them.
All right, my home is backed up to the alley in which shares with the bar in Clifton Heights. And for the last 3 years, I guess you could say we've been tormented. I've been tormented, me and my family. I feel like we're disregarded as a private residence living at this location. The trash, the verbal disrespect from patrons, there's so much, I don't even know where to begin. We've been living with this, and we've had 3 different meetings with the city, and Mr. Cook was available at 2 of them, I believe. And every time we've met with him, he's promised to improve things, to change things, to clean up the parking lot. He's been very apologetic, but never anything happens. Whenever we met with him, he said that he would make his personal cell phone available for us at any time. That phone number and or email has never been made available to us. Not to me anyway. I have grandchildren that try and spend time in my backyard. It's difficult to do that because the cursing, the carrying on late at night. Again, I don't know really where, and it's been a nightmare. All right, the couple times that I have approached the tavern to go in there and raise an issue, maybe with the bartender, because Mr. Cook told us in one of the meetings, he says, anytime you got a problem, just go in there, speak to my bartender, and everything will be taken care of. All right. When you go in there and you ask to speak to Mr. Cook, or you try and address anything with the bartender herself, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna get cursed out, you're gonna get disrespected, and nothing's ever gonna happen. It's a nuisance. And I bought my home to have a home. I didn't buy my home to party with the neighbors or with the tavern back there in the alley. It's daily for me to pick up trash out of my yard, to pick up their parking lot, because I don't want that blowing into my yard. Okay, so I walk around, I pick things up. It's bad. And my neighbors here that are present, they have it worse than I do. And I'm in full support of the revocation. It'd be one thing to be a good neighbor and to be a good business owner that respects the community. This man has absolutely zero respect and total disregard for the private residents that live in the area. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay.
Yep, let me do this. Let me start, and then I'll go around and see if any other board members have any questions for you. First of all, thank you for coming in today. Just a few questions I would like to ask. So, the commentary about, the disrespect from patrons and so forth, I'm guessing that is people on the patio, people leaving the back parking lot, people going to their cars, coming and going. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir. When people leave the bar overserved, they stumble out to their vehicles, and they see us in our backyard. They give us a nasty, mean scroll, or they might make a couple comments. There's a couple individuals that frequent the bar that like to regularly curse me because I want to live in my neighborhood. I want to live in my backyard. It's out of control. I want peace.
Thank you. This time I'm gonna open the floor up for questions from our other board members who are present here today. Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Are there others in the room with you that also wish to testify in revocation?
Sorry, President Bradley, if I may.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Can I get an idea of the longevity of your experience? Has this been throughout? Did you precede them? Did they precede you? Just an idea, or is this like a hyper acute situation?
I bought my home in 2019, right at the beginning of COVID. All right, and have spent a lot of time and money rehabbing and fixing up my home. So this has been a reoccurring nightmare. And again,
Since the beginning, sir?
I'm sorry.
Since the beginning, or were they shut down, I presume, during COVID?
Oh, they don't shut down very often. all right?
Okay, but
They're
since you moved into this house, this has been your experience, or did this?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. They open at 6 a.m.
Other questions from any of our directors? Okay, Michelle, do you have anyone else in the room that would like to testify?
Yes, I do. Could you give me your name, please?
Luke Backer.
I have Luke Backer here, and I'm going to swear him in.
Thank you.
Sure. Could you raise your right hand for me, please? The testimony that you're about to give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the board.
My name is Luke Backer. I live at 6014 Marmaduke. I'll try to take too much of your time. I kind of just want to piggyback off of what Kevin said. Most of our issues are the same. He lives right next to me. I live directly behind the tavern. We walked through our house to buy it basically right after everything had been shut down because of COVID. And I obviously realized that there was a bar there, but I never could have imagined that the things that happen there on a daily basis would be allowed to happen behind someone's home. We both are from and met in the craft beer industry, so we're both totally fine with the bar that doesn't have disrespectful patrons. It has people that respect the neighborhood and the property around them. But unfortunately, this bar is, most of its patrons and a lot of the regulars that go there just have a total disregard for anybody else's property, the amount of noise they make. At the beginning of February, in 2 or 3 weeks, I had, I believe, 2 hit and runs. One was our vehicle parked in the front of our house. They drove from the back alley where their parking lot is, down the side alley, and then totally obliterated the side of our vehicle that was parked on the side of the road in a normal street parking spot. Drove off. I believe it was slightly less than 3 weeks later. You can see a big group of people being super loud come out. Guy gets in his pickup truck and just smashes in the side of my garage and caused hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of probably structural damage I've yet to have looked at. And that was within 3 weeks of each other. Literally yesterday, that flower pot that Kevin picked back up, I saw last night. I checked the cameras last night before I went to bed, and it was somebody from the bar. You can see them stumble out of the bar, get in their vehicle, and you can follow them down the side alley camera I have and just watch them drive over a flower pot in someone's yard. These people are literally so intoxicated and so overserved, they legitimately are crawling to their vehicles. And I confronted the individual who hit our car because the police basically told me that they would not do anything when I called them for this incident, to try to get her insurance or something. And she basically told me she had zero recollection of it, that she was so intoxicated she didn't even remember driving home, and she tried to retrace her steps the next day and couldn't figure out what happened because her car was severely wrecked as well. And that's just a very common theme, is just the disregard for the property. I mean, we've had individuals end up in my backyard through my fence. We've had people throwing Keno pencils in the backyard saying that they hope my dogs choke on them and die. I've had neighbors who live a block or two over that are walking their dogs by say, hey, you know, be careful, man. Like, I don't know if you hear the way that these people talk about you guys, but it's not very nice. Like, keep an eye open. And that's, you know, concerning because I put everything I have and then some into this house. I'm trying to improve this neighborhood and make this a place that, you know, people want to live. And like, I can't even have, I can't put up a nice fence because I'm afraid somebody's going to drive through it. I can't let my dogs in the backyard unsupervised because I'm afraid somebody's going to try to kill my dogs. I can't have friends over in the backyard because drunk people from the bar stumble out and try to talk to you or yell at you or try to get into an altercation. Like, it's literally a living hell. And we've been going through this for 3 years. And Karen's been extremely helpful, but like, I just don't know, I don't know where it ends. Like, I don't know what else to do, like. So, I don't know. It's just been very frustrating and it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to want to continue to improve my house and the neighborhood and everything around me when, you know, just that much blatant disrespect is happening, you know, to your property and the thousands and thousands of dollars that I've lost just from people who don't care and hit your stuff and drive away. And then I call the police, I give them the license plate number and they tell me I have to hire a lawyer and sue them if I want anything to happen. I mean, coming from the alcohol industry, it's illegal to serve people in the state of Missouri to the point where they're that belligerent. You can be held personally responsible and your business can be held responsible. So I guess I just don't really understand why the tavern is completely above the law or why it's even gone on as long as it has at this point.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Your comments are noted. Again, I will open the floor up for any questions from any of our board directors here today.
Hi, this is Director Pearson. To the gentleman who was just speaking, I'm very sorry that that has been your experience. I was wondering if you could clarify a point for me because I fear I might have missed it. Did you say that your dog choked on something and died?
No, there was a couple incidents. The one that I remember clearly, I saw some people kind of by our fence line being sort of odd pretty late when I had let the dogs out before we went to bed. So I checked our camera that's right there, and it was these two guys, and they were kind of whispering, but they were right under my camera. I could hear them, and I'll paraphrase, but basically it was like, oh, like this is, you know, the house with the dogs and, you know, that those, you know, people that want to shut down the bar or whatever. And the friend was like, yeah. And then they took a fistful of Keno pencils, like the little short pencils that you fill Keno out with at the bar, and then like threw them over the fence and basically said like, oh, like hopefully they'll choke on them and die.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Mm.
Thank you. Other questions from board directors? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Michelle, do you have anyone else in the room with you?
Sure, I have, let me get your name. Karen Clifford. She's the neighborhood stabilization supervisor. Could you raise your right hand for me, please? Thank you. The testimony that you're about to give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. I did. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Clifford, and I'm currently the Neighborhood Improvement Specialist Supervisor for the City of St. Louis. Previously, from February 2020 through September of 2022, I was the Neighborhood Improvement Specialist for the neighborhood of Clifton Heights, where this area is located. I had been contacted numerous times from these two residents who live across the alley from this establishment. And we did make arrangements and we had meetings, and all three of them, the alderman was there a couple of times. The owner of the tavern, which leases the property from the owner of the actual property. So, you know, there were things that did come out and promises that were made, and it seemed right after that one meeting, things had quieted down a little bit. But the reason why the city was contacted was that these neighbors' concerns were their property. their property was being damaged by vehicles that were leaving the parking lot of the tavern. And we had actually had someone from a couple of people from streets, the streets liaison representative, and I believe also a person from BPS was there too, because I met the alderman Brett and Ryan felt that it might be something that might be expedited, but we talked about different ways to protect the back properties of these two residents so that their property would not be damaged from vehicles. We even talked about the possibility of even making the alley a one-way alley to avoid the trucks or departing vehicles going up that alley and not making that turn. So and with further information that was coming in from the residents. And it's not just these two residents either. There have been some other complaints that came in. That I was the one that referred it to the problem properties. So and it is still in the problem properties, an active property there. So I just wanted to give the city's involvement in this. Mainly, we have been trying and working to try to work with the residents and also with the establishment to try to come to some type of conclusions and resolutions to the issues of the noise, of the of the patrons when they're leaving, so that and to reduce the damages to the property of these homeowners that are residing across the alley from this location.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. I'm gonna start and ask a couple questions. So it sounds like you were the neighborhood stabilization supervisor for a couple of years in this area. Do you believe that when you approached the business owner, that there were strides made to correct these problems? Do you think that anything effective happened? Or do you think that today it is very representative what the two gentlemen testified to in the room?
In my opinion, I believe it has remained the same. There were promises made, are things that were going to be checked into, but they have not evolved. I do want to also, as far as with the owner of the property, it is held in trust, but the owner of the property has had deceased, I believe, last year. And so that has changed over. There has been a change there. I don't know if there was any discussion between the leasee and the owner of the property to maybe make some improvements on the parking lot. And also the and to keep the area cleaned up. So I have not seen any changes as far as when I have observed the area recently.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the floor up for questions from any of the other board directors at this time. Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you for your testimony. Michelle, is there anyone else present who was to testify?
No, I think that's it, President Bradley.
Okay, so no one else in the room. I don't see anyone else in the chat. If there's someone else online that wishes to support this revocation, please bring it to my attention at this time. Seeing none. At this time, the board asks the conditional use permit holder to please come forward and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand, please. The testimony that you're about to give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the board.
Stephen Cook, and you want the business address or my personal address?
Your personal address.
1905 Lily Avenue, 63110.
Thank you.
So I would ask you to do at this time, sir, is mentioned to the board, respond to the violations or any of the comments that you have heard so far. Please be objective and explain to us your side of the story.
Sure. So the first one I want to address is the dumpster. Under, as long as I've owned the bar and even before that, for the past 30 or 40 years, it's never been concealed. It was never once mentioned or brought up to me that it had to be, I guess, concealed. So that was kind of surprising when, I got that notification about it. I was told that you can apply for a modification. My question is since I technically don't own the land or the property, I don't know, is that something that you have to go through the landlord through or what? Because I already contract through Waste Management, so it is a private trash company.
Right, so you would have to go through your landlord and you would have to arrange to have an enclosed dumpster, and the permit as it was filed has that condition in it. So if you didn't know that, then it was part of it and there is a possibility to get a waiver, but again, the commentary that we're hearing here may not even allow for that to happen, but please proceed and talk about the rest of the things.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I don't know where to start. I'm not going to sit here and, say that the bar is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Are there problems every now and then? Yes, it's a bar. Every single bar has that issue. A couple things, that I wish to dispute for sure is, they're saying that cars are ending up in their yard. They have metal poles in front of their fence that would prevent any car from going into their yard or causing any damage to their fence. So I do question that. I know when I met with, and I'm sorry, I forget her name. I think it was Karen, the safety improvement inspector, a couple of years. We talked about making the alley, one way. If we can get the landlord to restripe the parking lot and move the parking spots back a little bit, and that way it would allow for more room for the cars when they do turn out, that they would be able to make that turn. And, I know they said there was 3 meetings. We've only met one time. So it wasn't 3 meetings. We met in person one time. Sorry, I'm just reading some notes here, so bear with me here.
Take your time.
And then again, when I did meet with Karen on an email chain, my email and personal cell phone were available on that chain. So, as I told them, they could call me at any time. I've never received one phone call. It was made available. Let's see. Again, bear with me. I got to read all these notes here. Trash issue. I have cameras out back also. I check the cameras quite a bit. I have never seen, them in their backyards picking up trash. My bartenders every morning are out there sweeping the lot. Sometimes when Waste Management does come, they do dump a lot of trash. If it's a windy day, it does blow away. Can't catch it in time, but I do make the bartenders clean up the lot. So that does happen. I've never seen the neighbors behind me walking the lot, cleaning up trash. I'm on the cameras quite a bit when I'm not able to be there, as I do also work full time. As far as noise goes, again, it does happen, and I'm not going to deny that. We have put some restrictions in place. The patio is no longer allowed to be occupied after 10 o'clock at night. The patio is no longer allowed to be occupied until 9 o'clock in the morning for that reason. Bear with me here. No, and do you have anything? I have one of my bartenders who's been working there for 30 years with me. Do you have anything to add, Levon? Or anything you heard that you'd like to refute?
We'll do you first, then we'll.
Okay, sorry.
And then, yes.
Yeah, I was just asking because she's writing the notes for me, so.
That's okay. We'll do one at a time.
Okay.
I mean, they've all just moved in there.
And it's been a bar, from my understanding, since the 1950s or early 60s, I believe. We do fundraisers, we do good things for a lot of people. It's part of my livelihood. It's definitely my staff's livelihood. You're hurting a lot of people by wanting to close the bar down just because there's a issue here and there. It's not noisy every night. It's not busy every night. I think they're blowing their complaints out of context, to be honest with you. Um, again, have there been issues? Yes, there's always going to be an issue. I'm not going to deny that. But I put a lot of what I call protocols in place to try to combat that. The other thing that, we just started doing, especially on nights, is my bar back is going to be patrolling the parking lot every 15 minutes to help corral people from standing outside. If they leave, they have to get in their car and leave. Yeah, I mean, you only can do that so much. You can't police people 24/7. That's the problem. In the morning, there was a undesirable element that had been coming over. I have effectively banned them to try to combat the problem because they were a problem. I'm not going to deny it. But over the past couple of weeks, once I banned them, they're not there. I'm on the cameras. I've never seen anyone throwing anything in the yards. I'm there quite a bit. I've never seen any of my patrons cursing out the neighbors or even talking to them. In fact, they're very rarely outside, and I know they said it's because of the bar, but that's not necessarily truth because people aren't outside that much. They're in the bar. When they leave, they leave. As far as people being overserved, I have regulars there that I know very well. They have their 2 to 3 drinks, they sit and talk, and they leave. If someone is overserved, it doesn't necessarily mean it came from my bar. There's other bars that people can walk into and they'll drink water at my place. It doesn't mean that they were served at my bar. My bartenders have been there for a while. They know the signs. And then hang on, let me read this. Yeah, I know, I think I mentioned it, but the property being damaged, I don't see it. I know the one neighbor right behind me who just moved in 3 years ago behind a bar. He has a big truck with no plates that's been sitting on the corner of the alleyway in the street that you can't see around. If you want to pull out, you can't see around. I mean, I think that is an issue in and of itself right there. As far as I'm concerned, I wasn't going to complain about it, but I mean, it makes it impossible to turn out of there. It's just little things like that that I think are just piling on me that there's not one big, huge, outstanding issue that's going on. No matter if it's a bar or restaurant, there's always going to be a complaint. I think everyone in the room knows that. People walk out of a bar or a restaurant, they'll sit in the parking lot and talk for 5 minutes. Hey, where you want to go? Hey, it was good seeing you, so on and so forth. I'm sorry if they're loud. I can't control people's voices, so to speak. But that's one of the protocols I'm trying to put into place is, again, having the bar back sweep the lot, saying, hey, take it somewhere else. Again, there's only so much we can do with that though. But they knowingly bought a house that was behind a bar. So I think you have to take that into consideration, especially the fact that the bar's been operating for so long, that you have to take that with a grain of salt as well. I'm not perfect. The bar is not perfect, but I think we've made some strides. Again, some of the improvements we talked about with Karen was out of my control. It was the street division. It was a landlord. And nothing got done with that. I think I had even mentioned about, maybe helping put a fence up if that was their, to put a privacy fence up for them. And, again, that went nowhere as well. Oh, and then, the other thing, not a big thing, but the other thing is that cars that drive through the lot, it's not always from the bar. People cut through that parking lot all the time to go down the alleyway. There's people that go to 7-Eleven that cut through the back alley that throw trash. I've seen them throw trash. A little airplane fireball bottles that they get from 7-Eleven, down them and throw them. So again, it's not 100% from the bar. There's other forces at play, and there was a pretty good homeless vagrant element around that area as well. And I think that just kind of gets lumped into being part of the bar crowd, which is far from the truth. I probably have more, but I can't think of it right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off with a couple things and then we'll move around to some of the other board members. So one of the conditions, first of all, I want to state that a conditional use permit is granted because the zoning doesn't allow for that business to be there. Okay? You are the one with the conditional use permit, not the homeowners. The zoning allows them to be there. It does
Sure.
not allow you to be there without this permit. So the commentary about they bought a house behind a bar is irrelevant. So one of the conditions here on your permit says is that the premise cannot become a nuisance property by ordinance 68535. That is solely your responsibility. So let me ask a few questions. You said you've taken measures to mitigate some of these complaints. Have you ever hired a security officer to work outside the bar and ensure that these things aren't happening?
I have not hired one. I have looked into it. I have contacted a couple companies and I don't know. I'm not very familiar with security companies on who will do it. Like Garda, I think is a big one, but there are certain, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess size or aspects that they wouldn't do a small place like mine for one guy. So I have looked into it. I'm not very up to speed on what security companies would do it. I don't know if like an off-duty police officer would suffice.
I think there probably are a number of options that could be done there to ensure that, someone's kind of walking around on the perimeter of the property, ensuring the noise, the trash, the damage compliance is kept to a minimum. What I want to tell you is this, from my perspective, I have been with the city for over 36 years. And I have been in this position for 4 appointments in 15 years. I have had very few of these, if any, where we've had something elevate to this level. Typically what happens is the property owners work together and they figure out a way to coexist, or they no longer coexist because we don't allow the business to coexist there anymore. So, I guess my question to you is, what can you tell us today that is going to make us feel and the homeowners feel like this is not just talk. This is not just another opportunity to say, I'm going to address this problem. What are you, going to do that is going to resolve these complaints to the point where we don't have properly zoned homeowners coming to us, telling us that a permit holder that we've granted is violating conditions and their property's nuisance? What can you do to resolve that?
Well, number one, I will definitely look into doing security. I have no problem doing that. Like I said, if I have to pay a little bit of money out of pocket, that's fine because it's part of my livelihood. But more importantly, it's my staff livelihood because without that job, they don't have anything. So I am definitely willing to consider that and do that. That's not a problem. Again, I work full time, so I can't be there late at night every night. I am definitely willing to put more time in. I can do that. That's not a problem. I'm there probably 5 to 6 days a week anyway, but I can do that. That's not a problem. I can also offer to close the patio even earlier. 8 o'clock during the summer. I think 9 o'clock is a fair assessment during the summer since it stays light out till about 9 o'clock. But I would be willing to close the patio. There is no music. I pretty much told them that they're not allowed to put the music on outside, to help for the quietness. Patio in the morning, I have no problem keeping that closed until lunchtime, maybe, or whatever. I'm willing to make concessions. They say I'm not willing to work with them. I 100% disagree. Part of the stuff that we had discussed during our one meeting, it was out of my hands as far as the one-way street, putting the fence up, repaving the parking lot and putting stripes down. So the patrons would have a better spot of where to park and be able to be back a little bit, so not so close to their fence. That was 100% out of my control. I tried to buy the building so I could make those improvements, but the landlord chose not to sell.
I'll open the floor up for other board members who might have a question for you.
President Bradley, I think Mary Hart Burton wants to talk. She is not a panelist.
Okay,
Somebody can make her one.
She's in. If she unmute her camera, she can speak.
Can you hear me?
yes, Mary, can you turn your camera on?
I
It's okay.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
have anything new to
Get
add
sworn in, please.
because it didn't come out.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mary, I'm gonna swear you in.
I'm sorry. I don't see a button for the camera. I'm on a new laptop. I only see the mute button. So I would turn it on if I could,
Sure,
Okay.
go ahead and raise
but
your
I'll raise
hand.
my hand. I
Yes,
promise.
please. Thank you.
Okay, the testimony that you're about to give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Yes. I-
Thank you.
Please
Thank-
proceed, Mary.
Sure. I just want to add in reference to the testimony that we heard from Mr. Cook. And I did put this in the chat when I couldn't figure out how to get to you guys. But, according to our records, Mr. Cook has been aware of the conditions on his conditional use permit since 2018, when BPS sent their final decision out to Mr. Cook. In regard to the striping of the parking lot or the enclosure for the trash can, I think we heard some testimony from Mr. Cook about that being the landlord's responsibility. It's my opinion as a zoning administrator, we don't care if the landlord makes those improvements or the business owner makes those improvements. But to just say that that's the responsibility of the landlord, I think it merits a little more discussion, because there is some responsibility on the part of the business owner to work out with the landlord, how are those conditions going to be met? And that's my only comments, unless you have some questions for me, Mr. President.
So I do not have any questions for the zoning administrator. Do any of the board members have questions for the zoning administrator? You cannot ask questions. You're not here to ask questions, just testify, sir. So, other board members for the zoning administrator? Okay, thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna go back for just a minute here and give Mr. Cook an opportunity to speak. And then we have one other person that he would like to bring on to oppose the revocation. So go ahead, Mr. Cook.
Okay, and the one thing about the dumpster also, I just want to point out, it's not solely my dumpster. Adam Smokehouse next door to me, who shares the same building, he uses the dumpster 50% of the time. He pays half of the bill as well. So it's not just my issue. And going back to dealing with the landlord, getting the things improved. If you guys knew who Steve Jacobsmeyer was, he was unresponsive and unwilling to put any money into the bar or the parking lot. I've had to pay for a roofing company to come out and pay and seal the roof on my own because he would not do it, even though it was leaking into my business. So anything that, you guys say I could have worked out with the landlord, that is a false statement because he was unresponsive. I took initiative upon myself to repair what I could, what I felt was fair for me to pay.
Okay, anything else?
No, again, as far as the enclosure goes, I mean, it was in my permit. I'm not a lawyer. I don't read legalese. If it's on me to fence it in, I can do that as well.
So I think what I would respond to a couple of the comments is, you're issued a conditional use permit. You have a situation that doesn't comply with the permit. What my recommendation would have been is you should have approached the zoning department right away and said, I cannot meet this condition because the dumpster is half owned by the neighbor and half by myself. Or you could still fence it and, they work along with that with 2 locks on the enclosure, whatever the case may be, but somewhere along the line, there has to be some course of action to say between 2018 and now that this has been an issue. As far as the landlord goes, again, we issued you the permit to operate here. You're the one who signed the agreement with the landlord. That's between you and them. We don't have an agreement with them
Sure.
to do anything. So whatever business moves in there has to comply with the things we have. So one more time, I'm going to ask if any of the board members have any questions. Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. I believe we have one other person who wishes to testify. You mentioned one of your bartenders. Are
That's
they
correct.
on the call with you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have her sit down, and it's starting to rain and my windows are down. I'll be right back. I have to roll my windows up.
Hello.
Okay, so what I would ask you to do is please be sworn in by the secretary.
Okay.
Sure. Can you raise your right hand for me, please? Thank you. The testimony that you're about to give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the board.
Levon Torpia, 3114 Parkhampton Court, St. Louis 63139.
Okay, thank you, and go ahead and address the board, please.
I just want to say that honestly, I've worked at that bar for 35 years. And there's only been one other time that we've had issues like this, and it was one resident and it was a previous owner, one resident that kept complaining about stuff. And I mean, we had 3 hearings at that time, and it was just one neighbor that kept complaining. I mean, we tried, as bartenders, we're there by ourselves most of the time. On on Saturday and Sunday, we have a bar back. So it's really difficult to try to control people outside and run the bar inside. But we try to do our best. That's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. So I will start with a question and I will fall back to where I was at before. Your comment is duly noted. I, in my past years, have spent plenty of time bartending and bar backing and door manning at various venues around St. Louis. So my question to you is, you're there by yourself or you're there with a bar back. Would it not be beneficial to have an outside security individual who would be that person who would be there to help control and make sure that conditions are being met?
Yes, absolutely. I think that would be great.
Okay, that's my only question. I'll open the floor up for any other questions from any of the other board members. Okay.
I'm sorry, President
ahead,
Bradley, I
Ann.
do have one
Go ahead,
question. Can
Director.
you,
Sure.
can you confirm your hours of operation for me?
The hours of the bar,
Yes, ma'am.
what,
6 to 1.
6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m.
1:30 a.m.
1:30 a.m.
You do last call.
Yes. Except on Sunday, we don't open till what, 9 to 1:30 on Sunday.
So 6 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. the following morning.
Correct.
Is that typical for bars to open that early?
Is that a me question or a me question?
Is that a me question or is that the owner question?
Whoever has knowledge about.
I mean,
that.
there's several bars around here that are open those hours. I mean,
There are, and
there's several that are open till 3 a.m.
yeah, we're not a 3 a.m. bar, but the 6 a.m. is, living in South City especially, it's a blue collar town or area, is that we get a lot of third shift people that come in, or we get EMT firefighters who worked all night. So that's kind of like their 5 o'clock happy hour time, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Director. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else present who wishes to speak in opposition to this revocation? Is there anyone else in the room with you, Michelle?
No, there's not.
And I do not see anyone else online. If you're online and I'm not seeing you and you wish to speak in opposition to the revocation, please bring it to my attention now. Okay, seeing none. The matter concerning hearing number 126107 RH is now closed and submitted. The board will now proceed with its regular agenda. Can you call the roll, please? You're on mute, Michelle. Thank you.
Director Coyle? Director Davis?
Present?
Director Hayes is excused. Director Pearson?
Present.
Director Scobie?
Present.
Director Williams? President Bradley?
Present, we have a quorum. I will call this meeting to order.
Regular business from the president. Recommendation that approval be given as follows. Amendment number 1 to Equipment Services Division, Service Contract Number 74199 for repair, replace, and service Clark engines and transmissions for vehicles and equipment with Clark Power Service, Inc. This First Amendment extends the termination of the contract to April 18th, 2026, and increases the maximum not to exceed amount to $1,040,000. Amendment number 3 to contract number 76838 for fire extinguisher service contract with Procon Fire and Safety LLC. This third amendment increases the labor rates as detailed in Exhibit A, which supersedes and replaces Exhibit A from the Second Amendment to the contract. The maximum not to exceed amount remains the same at $400,000, and the termination date remains the same as May 31st, 2024. Amendment number 4 to contract number 74879 for fire protection system service, testing, maintenance, repair, and certification contract with Engineered Fire Protection, Inc. This Fourth Amendment renews the existing contract and extended for an additional 1-year period. The contract termination date is respectfully amended to September 29, 2024, and also increases the contract not to exceed amount to $4 million. Amendment number 6 to the Facility Management Division's Elevator Service Contract number 75042 with Midwest Elevator Company, Inc. This Sixth Amendment extends the contract termination date to October 31st, 2024, and increases the PO for Gateway Transportation Center for $53,399.28 to $108,646.16. The maximum not to exceed amount increases from $8 million to $10 million. $10 million. It is also understood and agreed as of July 20th, 2023, the attached Exhibit A shall supersede and replace the existing Exhibit A from the contract. Maintenance agreement between Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District and the City of St. Louis for the issuance of a sewer permit by Metropolitan Sewer District for stormwater management facilities for the Cervantes Convention Center expansion and modernization at 701 Convention Plaza Drive, authorized by ordinance number 70883. Plans and specifications for letting number 8770 for renovations to the pavilion at Lindenwood Park. The estimated cost of this work is $123,783, authorized by ordinance number 71656 and funded by Parks Ward Capital Funds. Plans and specifications for letting number 8771, Terminal 1 Departure Bridge over Bad Claim Drive at an estimated cost of $334,600 to be paid from ordinance number 70140. Professional Service Agreement number 1271, Open-Ended Architectural Design, Drafting and Estimated Services at St. Louis Lambert International Airport with EXP US Services, Inc. for the maximum agreement amount of $90,000. From the Office of Special Events, request for the following to be approved, subject to certain conditions. There is one special event to be declared as a festival zone. City Social Washington Avenue will take place on Washington between 14th and Tucker on May 17th from 4 p.m. to 9 a.m. Setup and tear down will begin at 5 p.m. and end at 11:59 p.m. From the Director of Public Utilities, recommendation that the board declares as emergency action for the following: miscellaneous electrical service work for the Chain of Rocks and Howard Bend water treatment plants. Work includes maintaining the existing electrical infrastructure as well as responding to address issues with treatment equipment and facilities. The estimated cost of this work is $102,000. Chain of Rocks chlorine building cylinder room hoist repairs. The hoist is used to lift chlorine cylinders and is vital to everyday functions of the plant. The estimated cost of this work is $8,000. From the Director of Streets, recommendation that the following be approved, subject to certain conditions. Application number 132107, request by Headless Vet LLC to encroach with tables and chairs for a sidewalk cafe utilizing 156 square foot with liquor at 3128 Morgan Ford Road. Application number 132143, request by Mountain House Cafe LLC to encroach with tables and chairs for a sidewalk cafe utilizing 360 square foot with liquor at 2901 Macklin Avenue. Application number 132147, request by Holly Hills Improvement Association and the Special Business District to encroach with banners on 47 poles on Holly Hills Boulevard, Grand Boulevard, Morgan Ford Road, and Loughborough Avenue. Recommendation that the following be denied. Application number 132183, request by Good on Grand LLC to encroach with tables and chairs for a sidewalk cafe at 4317 Manchester Avenue due to a lack of adequate space to put tables and chairs and still maintain 4 feet of open, unobstructed walkway. From the Directors of Public Utilities and Streets, joint recommendation that the following be approved, subject to certain conditions. Request by Spire Energy for public improvements at 5200 Lindell Boulevard to install an above grade regulator station to replace the existing below grade regulator station installed in a vault. Request by Union Electric doing business as Ameren, Missouri for the installation of a 55 3-foot pole for the new transformer bank at 1403 North Heber Street. Joint recommendation that five applications from AT&T be approved, subject to certain conditions. Application number 20 for 2600 Clifton Avenue. Application number 21 for 6202 Columbia Avenue. Application number 22 for 5696 Kingsbury Avenue. Application number 24 for 5061 Potomac Street. Application number 25 for 125 Potomac Avenue. Joint recommendation that one application for Verizon be approved, subject to certain conditions. Application number 17 for 4201 Duncan Avenue. There are 6 conditional use permits from the Director of Public Safety.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Steve Narr, zoning specialist for the city. And I'll be representing the building commissioner at today's meeting. For board order number 766, transmitted here with our recommendations for the following: conditional use agenda applications. Approval with conditions is recommended for 6 applications. 5552 Page Avenue, 4100 Forest Park Avenue, Unit 425, 6163 West Florissant Avenue, 1530 South Kings Highway Boulevard, 408 North Euclid Avenue, Unit 306, and 5407 Riverview Boulevard.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions or comments on today's conditional uses? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Second, Pearson.
Thank you, directors. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Coyle, Director Davis,
Aye.
Director Pearson.
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Williams, President Bradley.
Aye, the conditional uses are approved. Hearing number 126107-RH, DBA The Tavern at Clifton Heights, 2817 Watson Road. What I'd like to do is I'll give you a small summary of what we heard today. Then I would like to open the floor for any director's comments. Before we make a motion, I will ask our city councilor's representative, Nancy Walsh, if she has any guidance for us, and then we'll entertain a motion. So there were originally 4 conditions that were in violation. The zoning inspector mentioned to us that 2 of those had been resolved. The 2 remaining were a concealed commercial dumpster and the premise shall not become a nuisance property. We heard from a number of individuals, 3, 2 neighboring individuals about issues with the nuisance property and trash and other items concerning property damage and so forth. We heard from a neighborhood stabilization officer who also mentioned some of the things that had been discussed and tried to be done over the years. I asked for her opinion on it as well. We also heard from our zoning administrator, Mary Hart Burton, who gave us some interpretations on the actual conditional use permit and items going on there. Then we heard from our conditional use permit holder, and then we heard from one of the conditional use permit holders employees against revocation. So that is a brief summary of what we've heard today. And so at this time, I'm going to open the floor up and let's have a discussion about what you heard and what you think we should do.
President Bradley, I don't quite have my voice. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you want me to speak now, or are the directors going to talk
I
first?
kind of thought I would give the directors an opportunity to speak first, and then, you know, if you would maybe give us your thoughts at the end of that, that'd be great. Then we'll consider where we're going to go with it. Thank you. Director Scobie, I think you were going to say something.
Oh, go ahead, Director Scobie.
Yes, it's this is kind of unusual. The bar owner, to me, normally when somebody's going to have their permit yanked, they're wanting to get, do what is necessary to comply with the requirements of the permit and take care of stuff. I heard the permit holders say statements, a lot of them seem to me it's not my fault or it's not in my control, or I'll look into like getting a security guard instead of saying I will get a security guard. It's and the other testimony from the people that want the permit revoked was that they've heard promises in the past and they never materialized, or at least not to the extent that is needed to resolve the issue. At least that was my take.
Thank you. Director Maddie?
Most of my comments were characterized by Director Scobie. I think, you know, I empathize deeply with the neighbors, but I think our role is to focus on the facts. And if there are violations that have been clearly stated, it's clear that those are present and that there was a level of negligence in being aware of what the responsibilities due to the conditional use permit was that need to be addressed. So unless I'm missing something, and I know Nancy will swoop in and help us here, that's really where I landed. I mean, it was, while I empathize with everyone, at the end of the day, I need to make an informed decision based on responsibilities by way of the permit to the from the person who applied for it, which that was my area of greatest concern.
Okay.
That, and even though I haven't been on this committee for as long as some of you others, I would agree that this is also an outlier as it pertains to that, and that was also of concern.
You know, Nancy gave us the definition of a nuisance. If you look into the chat, and a nuisance is a continuing act or physical condition which is made, permitted, allowed, or continued by any person or legal entity, their agents or servants, or any person or legal entity who aids therein, which is detrimental to the safety, welfare, or convenience of the inhabitants of the city or part thereof, or any act or condition so designated by statute or ordinance. So I think that kind of outlines that. Director Pearson, did you have any comments?
I did, yeah. So a couple of comments and then a question. So while Mr. Cook was speaking, I went on Google Maps and just kind of familiarized myself with the area. And I noted that the 7-Eleven that he and one other person had referred to seems to be less than, 20 feet away from the bar. And what I know just from being in the community and homeless services and working with people who make use of alcohol from 7-Elevens that have a permit to use, single serve containers. A lot of individuals come out of there and sometimes kind of hang out. I'm not saying that that's what people do at this 7-Eleven, but I'm also just kind of thinking through what Director Mati was saying about how I'm empathetic to a lot of the concerns of the neighbors. I also wonder how much back and forth or how much conflation there might be from individuals who are drinking at the bar versus individuals who might be utilizing 7-Eleven services. So I think that's just one point. The second point was, Mr. President, you made a very good suggestion, or I think a question you posed about them hiring a security agent. And I think it seems as though if they did hire somebody, it could be a reasonable approach to mitigate some of what is in Section 2, describing what a nuisance is. I think a question that I would have is, what is the authority that we have to mandate that he actually put that into action? Because it's not cheap. And I obviously don't know what his budget is, but I think it could be a reasonable addition to his team. And then the last question I have is, if we did vote to revoke his conditional use permit, at what point is that effective? Is that effective immediately, or is there a sunset time period? Because I know he has staff that he would have to transition out of employment.
So I'll walk through the questions in reverse order and say that, the 7-Eleven could be a draw for some of these people, and although I am empathetic to the neighbors, I also listen very carefully to city staff and our neighborhood stabilization supervisor who testified today. And that's specifically why I asked her, in her opinion, if there had been any efforts from the conditional use holder to resolve any of these issues. And she said, not really. And so, what we've always seen in the past, and I think Director Scobie said it pretty clearly, is, if you want to be in that neighborhood and you want to get along with the neighbors and you are the conditional use permit holder, you are going to go to the nth degree to make sure you get along with them, because that a hearing like this and complaints like this, your livelihood could be gone very quickly. And, I guess where I get a concern is that the people from 7-Eleven are one thing. When we're talking about vehicles running into garages and cars, that seems to not be people wandering from the 7-Eleven up the alley. So that's where I start to get a little concerned about that. Your next question was a security officer. How do we assure that? We already have, because we have a condition in here that says it should not become a nuisance property. And so it is incumbent on that conditional use holder to do whatever is in their control to not do that. And again, I'll go back to Director Scobie's point of, I'll look into it, or yeah, it's a great suggestion. This has not been going on for a week. This has been going on for a long time. And where you start to really wonder about this is when the gentleman says, well, here's my address and it's nowhere near there, and I work a full-time job and I can't be there all the time, and the bar's open from 6 a.m. until 1:30 a.m., except on Sundays, it's open from 9 to 1:30 in the morning, and you live by that, and it's a problem, and it doesn't go away. You do live there and you can't escape it. Like I said, we don't issue the conditional use permit to the homeowners. we issue it to the property owner that in good faith, they will maintain these conditions. And then the final question you had was about, remind me?
I think the final question was about when, if we revoked it, when would it take effect?
So, and Mary can chime in on this too, but there is an appeal process. And if I'm not mistaken, it is through the Board of Adjustment. So we are not the end all, say all, do all. They can still appeal this to another board before the lights are turned off. But Mary, you want to comment on that, or Nancy?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, so from the time that BPS makes their final decision, if they should decide to revoke, he, being the petitioner, has 30 days from that date to appeal it to the Board of Adjustment. During that 30-day period, we would expect the business to be closed down because it's revoked. It's a little bit different than the Board of Adjustment because the Board of Adjustment goes directly to the circuit court, where the conditional use revocation actually has one more administrative type step to take before it would go to the court.
President Bradley, so just to make sure that at least I'm being thorough in my mind in this, has this individual ever come before us? Has there been an opportunity? I know there's been an opportunity to remediate through neighborhood stabilization and others, but we have during these hearings provided certain conditions for people to show a good faith effort to improve. I think the magnitude of what needs to be done here is significant. So that's one of my first things is, have they actually come before us, or is this the first time? The second thing that's concerning is that while I appreciate that people swear under oath, if part of the decisions are being made by the level of damage, so, you know, and things of that nature, is there any documentation from the witnesses to prove what has happened, right? Because we heard a lot today, and that is very different from what the owner said. And so that would be something I would take into consideration as far as a final vote as well. Is there documentation? And it sounds like because neighborhood stabilization has been involved, I would trust that there's been some level of documentation, but I would not be comfortable moving forward, at least from my perspective, if it's more of a he said, she said, because these are very divergent testimonies that we heard.
Okay, so yeah, I agree. I think there's always room for evidence. Again, I fall back to, you know, our neighborhood stabilization supervisor, who is one of us, who is, you know, charged with, you know, mitigating situations like this. And that's, again, one of the reasons I specifically asked her the commentary about, you know, do you think this sounds correct? And do you believe that any steps have been taken? And she said, you know, her opinion was they had not. However, you are correct. We do give opportunities to individuals to cure. So to me, something like the dumpster, you know, could be fenced in relatively quickly. The nuisance property thing, I think there's a number of things that would have to be done there. And I don't think that giving somebody 30 days is enough to show that they're actually doing this for the long haul. So, you know, I think what I would ask you to consider is if you're going to do something along that lines, you might extend it a little bit longer than that, somewhere around 90 days, so that they fully have an opportunity to see what happens. Everybody will wind up back in here in a hearing again, and then we will ask for the specific, you know, information that you're talking about from them. So, you know, I haven't had one of these for a long time that's of this magnitude.
If neighborhood stabilization is here and says we have documentation of the type of damage that was reported, that would not make me go down a rabbit hole. If the question, if what they, because I was listening to neighborhood stabilization, if they're saying they haven't done as much as they need to deal with noise, and we make a vote or consider a vote around, you need to reduce your hours, you need to put a security guard in place, you need to handle the trash, like a whole list within 90 days. Those are two different things. So I think the magnitude of what there's evidence for is something that would be under consideration, but I'm also very interested in Nancy's perspective.
No, I understand, and I don't think we, the trash is a condition, the nuisance property is a condition. I
Mhm.
don't think personally as a board, we should dissect the nuisance property thing. I
Okay,
think it's a condition and that is on them. Whatever they feel like they need to do to mitigate that is on them. And I simply suggested that because I just wondered if something like that would, mitigate the problem, but maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But, again, the answer was, well, I'll look into that, but I don't know if there's anybody that would take that on. And so,
Mhm.
a lot of hemming and hawing, but,
Mhm.
Nancy, you want to give us some suggestion here on what maybe you're kind of seeing and thinking?
Sure. So, just to clarify, only the city councilor can give a legal opinion, okay? But, to point out some things that I think you already know, you have the definition of a nuisance, right? And the purpose of a nuisance definition is because you can't possibly contemplate in advance every possible way that one property is going to be unreasonably hurting neighboring properties, right? So that's why there's flexibility there. That basically, if it might be the right thing, but in the wrong place or not functioning the way it should be. I've seen this board defer, right? I know President Bradley knows about, it's possible that you could give them 60, 90 days or something, and have them come back and see if things have changed. There was the recent example, and Mary might be able to speak more to it about the car storage lot where they basically applied for an entirely new permit with different conditions. And you renegotiate, or the planning department or zoning would have it, I guess the zoning office would have a chance to, and the neighborhood improvement people to talk about what is the situation now. The residential neighborhood may have more young families than it did 30 years ago when this bar came in. Maybe it's not appropriate to have a 6 a.m. wake up call anymore. These are all things that, might take a little time to kind of rehash what is an appropriate use. In terms of Dr. Mahdi's comment about written evidence versus testimony, all this testimony was sworn testimony. So as long as you give faith to it, you are the finder of fact. So a written record is great, but you will have a record if this is appealed. So I don't know if you have any further questions, but it looks like Mary has something to say.
Mary?
Mary, you're muted.
Did you have a comment, Mary?
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. So just a couple of things. While the bar may have been there for 30 years, I do want to point out to the board that in 30 years, we in zoning haven't received any complaints until after the bar was under the ownership of Mr. Cook in 2018. I differ slightly from what Nancy said about what I think their next steps are. Currently, you have a valid conditional use permit that is under a revocation. So I think the board, of course, can revoke it, or they can decide not to revoke it, or what you've done many times in the past that's similar to what the Board of Adjustment sometimes does is that you have granted a continuance and then directed the petitioner to go back before another conditional use hearing to try to amend his conditions to conditions that can be abided by and still run his business. That's the three options I see.
Good. Thank you, Mary, for that clarification. I
Thank
agree. So I think where we're at here is with that decision today. And, there are four of us here. And so naturally, in order for something to pass, somebody will have to make a motion in a second. And then three of the four will have to vote in favor of it. So, I will leave that to the board to make a motion here. So if, just to add a little bit of information to this, if, you feel like you don't have enough today to make that final decision, then I would recommend that we give it 90 days and then let the people come back and see if any changes have happened. And if nothing has changed between those parties and the owner has done nothing to try to resolve any of these issues, I think it'll be crystal clear to us that the heart is not in the right place.
Mr. President, what would the language for that motion look like?
And specifically, President, I'm trying to consider, do we put certain things that we're looking for at that follow-up, or do we keep that open and make a decision based on what we hear?
So theoretically, you cannot put any conditions on it. We're looking at the four conditions that were in violation.
Yes.
Two have been resolved. One is it's a nuisance property, and one is the dumpster. So if you want to give them 90 days to resolve the remaining two violations, which are condition number 4 and condition number 5, then it would give them ample time to, clean up their act, do whatever they need to do, and make amends with their neighbors in order to do it. And then we would come back in 90 days and we would do this exercise again. And we would hear from both parties, and you would, obviously be able to tell pretty straightforward from your own recourse what was clear, what wasn't clear, and what they've done. The other option is that I see is we revoke this. We show that, we issued a permit in good faith. They are in violation of it. We didn't feel comfortable today that the conditional use holder was going to, jump through hoops to get this done. And then we allow them to take it to the next level, which is the Board of Adjustment for an appeal. Those, in my mind, those are the options that I see, other than dismissing the hearing, which I would not think is appropriate.
Nancy, may I ask one question? From the definition that you put in the chat for a nuisance, if they were to resolve the two things that President Bradley spoken about, which is like the dumpster and the one other thing, but there was still testimony around the level of noise and how that would still satisfy the definition of a nuisance, correct? So what we'd be looking for in 90 days would be all of it has improved significantly.
Yes, the dumpster resolved, and that it is no longer a nuisance property, which is noise.
Gotcha.
The damage to property, anything that constitutes a nuisance to the neighbors.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for I'd like to make a motion for a 90-day continuance.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Pearson, second.
Thank you. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Coyle, Director Davis,
Aye.
Director Pearson,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Williams, President Bradley.
Aye. 90 days. We'll be back to see what they do.
Miss President Bradley,
Yes.
just for our clarification, you've tabled it for 90 days for them to come into compliance with the conditions they're in violation of, but
Yeah.
you are not ordering them to come to another conditional use hearing and try to amend their conditions.
That's correct. It's
Okay,
come into
I want to make sure
compliance,
we know
come
our role.
90 days to come into compliance. If they are not in compliance, then we will have a discussion then.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'd like to turn your attention to our meeting minutes from April 9th, 2024. Are there any comments or questions on the meeting minutes as presented? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve, please.
Motion to approve, Davis?
Thank you. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Coyle, Director Davis,
Aye.
Director Pearson,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Williams, President Bradley.
Aye, the meeting minutes are approved. Today's agenda, are there any questions or comments on our meeting agenda today? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve, please.
So moved, Scobie.
Second Pearson.
Thank you. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Coyle, Director Davis,
Aye.
Director Pearson,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Williams, President Bradley.
Aye, today's agenda is approved. Before we adjourn, are there any questions or comments from any of our board directors?
I just want to say thank you, Mr. President, Sandra, Mary, Nancy, for giving us that feedback and context. That was a very complicated discussion. And I felt as though your feedback helped us come to a thoughtful next step. So much appreciated.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome, and obviously we want to get it right. That is what it's all about. So now we will have an opportunity to see firsthand what the issues are. So thank you for that. No further comments? If you are in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks, everybody.